Okay, guys, time for one of the most comprehensive show report videos I've done, and it's for the show that was just recently in Costa Mesa. Includes my feedback as well as many of my friends, experts, as well as some exclusive reveals. Stay tuned. Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. I've already given you a show report from my perspective that was done off the cuff, but what I've been doing recently with some shows, especially ones that are attended by a lot of my friends, as well as some experts that I know, is do a Zoom that includes many of my WhatsApp group, the private membership group that all of you are invited to. There's a link in the bottom of how you can join. But these people are longtime friends, very high acumen audiophiles, very experienced. And what I like to do on my channel is not force feed you just my opinion. I like you to get a perspective from a lot of different people. And in a lot of cases, these are extremely high level experts. People like Ralph Karsten you've seen in the past. In this video, you're going to see Steve McCormack, as well as some familiar audiophiles you've seen on my channel. And you're going to get different perspectives from Dave Olson, relatively new to my channel. In fact, this is going to preview video I'm going to do from his home where we installed the Bach, and he's got these amazing TAD reference ones in an environment that most people wouldn't think is a great environment. So that's going to be one of the takeaways. Also, there is going to be a lot of stuff on the Bach that was at the show and had lines getting in there and awards and measurements that we could share and feedback that you're going to get, as well as on the Popori and an exclusive announcement I'm going to make regarding Popori in this video. Also, one thing I excluded by mistake in my prior video was calling out the budget rooms that were top notch at the show. You're going to hear that in this video. Some of the nightlife stories, at least some of the feedback from everybody that was there, and all the rooms from different people's perspective, including Steve McCormack, what he ended up buying after this show, and also some more feedback on his amplifier that he did bring, and we were able to run on the Poporis before ours. So this is going to be about an hour and a half video. I'm going to break it into chapters to kind of help you out, but this is kind of give you a little bit of a cliff notes, and then maybe I'll even do some shorts to give you excerpts from this. I think it's well worth your time if you've got the time, but it's not eye candy and for the drive-by audiophile. But everybody else, I think you'll enjoy. Stay tuned.
So, kind of a spoiler alert here. I went to Dave's house and set up the Bach, and we bypassed all the playback designs other than the amp, got some phenomenal measurements. But one thing I was not expecting at all, because if you look around Dave's room, it's a family room.
Right.
And it's asymmetric.
Right.
And what do we always see, regardless, Bach, no Bach, whatever, under 200 hertz, the room pretty much dictates the response.
Yeah.
And even if you have the Bach, you'll usually have a node that you don't want to boost too much. You know, you can boost some way out of it, depending on where it is and whatnot, but you're usually left with some little bit of an anomaly because you're symmetrically loading the room with bass, with just two floor standards. Now, if you can get subs and you can get like a swarm method, you could do some crossover things, then you can kind of mitigate that. But I was very shocked that with 2 dB max gain in Dave's room, he had none of that under 200 hertz. I mean, we could have got away with zero. I could not believe in that room, bass was so good. And it goes back to what JR has always told me. You cannot model anything regarding bass. You could try to look at dimensions, and obviously there'll be some physics behind it, but you never know how bass is going to react in a room from where you're sitting and where those speakers are. Because just 6 inches here, 6 inches here, like so many variables, and the height of the ceiling, there's just so many variables that he just is in the right spot, especially for bass. And then we got the measurements for Bach, tailoring it, and we used the olive curve, which is a little more bass, because his room, one of the cool things that I got to see firsthand is when you have a very reverberant room like he has right now with not a lot of room treatments, the high frequencies tend to linger more. Bass will pass right through the walls. It's not as much of a deal.
Yeah.
But in order to offset that extra high frequency energy in a reverberant environment, people typically smartly want a little more bass. And that kind of balances out the tonal balance. And sure enough, we measured Dave's room with the mics out of the ear. I just wanted to see what he was listening to natively in his room with the TADs. And it was boosted bass, quite a bit, but that's natural for that room. You would want that to sound decent and tonally balanced. But with the Bach, we did a little bit of a curve, a olive curve. And for his room, that's probably the best one. And now he's going to get the EQ and he can play with that balance a little bit more. But this was a great case of showing how the Bach and those measurements alone told a story that you would not think looking at Dave's room. A lot of people knee-jerk say he's got too much gear for that room. Well, at the end of the day, with the Bach, his room measurements are insane, probably very close to Scott's measurements, maybe not as much XTC, but those TADs are very directional and very extremely good, even though he's got a sidewall and one reflection on the right side. Really nothing else in that room is impacting those TADs to any significant and then he was able to A/B it much better once we got it dialed in. And that was another thing that we learned about the Bach is that we were able to change the time window from where it was hitting a reflection, change the time window out to 9 milliseconds. And that made all the difference to Dave when he was doing the A/B before that. So it was a very worthwhile few hours that I spent over their house for showcasing what the Bach can do.
And Dave was saying when he described the room, I was like, that sounds to me like, you remember I was saying, I like, how people say that it looks like you got a 4 to 12 cathedral ceiling in there. And some people say, oh, you're smoked right out of the gate. And it's like, that to me gives you something to work with. And it sounds like it did. Like that ceiling.
It's certainly not as bad as knee jerk people would, take a pic, look at and say.
Yeah.
And people are going to be totally shocked after Bach measurements, what he's getting. They will be shocked that that room gets these measurements. But it's a testament. Sometimes you do want to spend money on a speaker, especially one that's very directional in such a room, such that you take some of the room out of the equation. Obviously, MBLs in that room would be not the right choice for that room because it sprays the sound around. They would look cool, of course. They look cool and everything, but yeah. Okay, we had a few more people join. Look at Mike Sweck looking potpourri as usual. Now I put on my potpourri hat so he doesn't feel lonely. I guess I should start off by announcing that I think I've now seen enough of the potpourri at show conditions and in my house. I've had WR2s, the hyper sales, which are just phenomenal. I'm finally getting a chance to test them and listen to them. Just amazing. And actually, Mike Sweck was in my room when we set them up. And he was just telling me the other day how much more impressed he was with them once he got to hear them in my room. And one of the common takeaways, every song I play, and I think Mike can share what his thoughts were, you hear stuff you've never heard before, especially with electrostatics. The lightness of the driver, the lack of crossover, the lack of parts in the critical area. There is just a level of decay and detail and things you've never heard before. Mike, what were your thoughts when you helped me set up the hyper sales?
Oh yeah, when you finally let me have the main seat and you're putzing around, I got to really listen. Yeah, there's songs that I knew really well that I was hearing stuff in those songs I never heard before, and yeah, it was incredible.
And Mike said he had to carry him up, and he had to be the one to set him up. You just sat there. That's what he told us.
We hired a guy on TaskRabbit
to
come up there, and I think we paid him, I don't know, 100 something bucks, and thank God we did. I mean, I did not want to carry that, but Yeah, it's a good point to transition while we're on the topic of potpourri, and I'm wearing this hat. Like I was saying, I've now heard the hypersales, which are, quite frankly, they're referenced. There is one model above it, but I've heard the WR1s in multiple locations, WR2s multiple times, WR3s multiple times. Every single time they've excelled in all these environments, such that now I can probably officially say and announce that I'm going to go ahead and add potpourri to my list of brands that I will represent going forward and be a home dealer for, in case anybody wants to come by. I just never been home to even do any of this, but I will be in town for a little while. Hey, Steve, how you doing there? Can you see?
How do the sales match up against the WR1s? I mean,
They're very similar in performance. There is a very different aesthetic profile to them, and then there's going to be a little bit more in the production model extension. I have the prototype, really the only one in the world with the hypersales. The final version is going to have a little more extension, I think, than the WR1s. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, when I had a call with them the other day, they're going to try to exceed the WR1 specs as far as the low frequency response. I believe they said late July they'll have the production model done.
Okay.
And if I don't talk a lot, I am really sick. So I got a cold or something.
Suck it up, Mike. Come on.
I'm trying, man.
Well, I got my dog talking for you. Let me see if I can hold on one second here.
Hey, I'll tell you, so far, like with those potpourris, and I made no prejudgment when I first heard about them, first started listening to them. I was just like, okay. And now I've heard them at several shows, and every time, what would you say? The only speaker we were comparing them to were speakers way out of the price range of those. And even at that, it's like,
you know what I was comparing them to.
the Von Schweikers.
Big Von Schweikers, yeah.
So it's like, and that's with heavy source material, you know, they throw everything at those usually, but the potpourris, it doesn't matter which venue I've been at, they're good. Like and it's not just good for the money, they're just flat great speakers. I mean, everybody that's gone to a show has to know that by now. There's no, this isn't just hype. This is the real deal. Like they're doing good. I mean, I think that people are the testimonies of people that have them is gonna speak volumes, because they'll probably all be pretty unified, even if they don't even know each other. The comments will probably be similar, is what I'm guessing. You know,
well, I think the key, I go to a lot of shows, and many of these vendors don't even make one sale the entire time. You know, it's mainly just for marketing, hopefully get a YouTube video. It's part of their marketing expenditure. But every single time potpourris have been at a show, they've led to #1 sales, more dealers, on top of the anecdotal reports and awards. So yeah, it's got a lot going for it, and I'll have a lot more in the future. I'm going to be having Dave Husto's video where he installed the WR3. That's a price point under 20,000. That's a no-brainer for most people. Very few electrostatics under 20,000 can give you that level of performance of WR3. And certainly if you add subs, which I've been teasing, guys, subs are coming, not from potpourri, I can tell you that. It's not a potpourri electrostatic sub, although I did mention it to him and he didn't say no. He just said, not right now. But I'm talking about something totally different. I'll tip you guys off on that in the near future. But yeah, the potential of performance is off the charts at that budget point. So yeah, props to Mike. I think Lewis was going to be coming on, who ran the room, Dynamic Sound Systems. He's the newest dealer there. And then Steve is on the call, and Steve, I think that was his first time getting a chance to hear him, and he's making a purchase of the WR2s, which were the same ones in my house, and Doug bought as well.
Yes, indeed. Looking forward to having them. So I know Mike's on the run to get this latest shipment out ahead of the tariffs that may be landing. And so, yeah, I've jumped on board that. that ship, and looking forward to having them. Absolutely. So yeah, you're right. This was the first time I actually got to hear any of the models was at this show, and that was the WR3s in the DSS room. And you know, I guess I've heard so much about them and seen your videos and, you know, heard people speaking about them. I felt as though I had a very clear understanding of what they were going to sound like, and that was exactly that. And so I've been an electrostatic lover for a long time, but generally speaking, well, up to now, invariably in the past, all of the electrostatics that I looked into, you know, they all had drawbacks of various kinds, and ultimately, I think fatal flaws that kept me from you know, pursuing that any further. So the Poporis look like the designer, who I assume is Mr. Popori or Popori, however that is pronounced, has been working with equipment repair, if I understood correctly, for a long time, like 30 years or something, and has done a lot of repair work on other people's electrostatic speakers, among other things. But doing that kind of work gives you a really deep insight into what works and what doesn't work. And so it seems like this guy has managed to put together a system, a design, electrostatic speaker that seems to overcome most of, if not really all, effectively, of the faults of the various electrostats of the past. And so, yeah, I decided it was time to take the plunge again after a long time.
Well, I tell people this all the time. I mean, if you go back, people will still lust after quads, one of the original electrostatics.
Well, I'm a longtime quad lover. I mean, that's
Yeah.
where I got my first taste of electrostats, and then acoustats, and then a whole lot of beverages and on, sound labs, et cetera, et cetera. But even with the faults of the quad ESL 57, I put together a system back in the late 70s when I was working at Jonas Miller Sound, bi-amplified with the 57s and a pair of M&K subwoofers. That was a phenomenal system.
We got somebody's talking in the background. Oh, Tony. Yeah, so I would agree with you. I mean, there's something about what he's doing is physics based, because everything he does is a calculation. How low you want to get it, how high SPL you want to get, how wide you want the panel. And then some of his secret sauce is, as I've mentioned, he rolls up, he makes sure mechanically that driver is never going to do anything it's not comfortable doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that even point source box speakers can benefit from that. Now, the distortion of point source box pistonic drivers isn't as annoying as when panels slap, but I think almost every speaker could benefit by what he's doing, making, just like you make a mid-range cut off at the top and the bottom, so it performs in its range. It's just not, and then the power to your amplifier is not being demanded as much. But in any case, the other thing he's got is less stored energy in the cabinet. You know, there's some awesome hybrids.
Not much cabinet there to store energy.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if any, I mean, I would have gone with Scott's Sanders, and that's what Edgar uses. That's the best hybrids electrostatics around, you know, probably, you know, as good as you can get of a speaker that's a hybrid for sure. But if you can do it where you don't have any stored energy and any pistonic drivers, that's always been the bugaboo. Nobody's been able to do that. And I think part of it is because he's not having a lot of excursion at the bottom, just enough to meet the metrics that he sets and the SPLs that he sets.
It makes me a little curious. I mean, not that I'm terribly concerned about exactly how he does it, but he's come up with something really good there to be able to limit the excursion at low frequencies in such a way that it doesn't seem to affect the sound. And you don't really hear dynamic compression, as you know, as it's getting at near whatever limit it is, it just seems to roll off quite naturally. So that's very impressive.
I tried to override it. I tried to use the bass boost in Bach just to see if I could make it boost up. It won't. It just won't do it. And so that's
a big plus for that.
A huge plus. And then everything you hear above that, when you operate a driver and a speaker coherently, as coherent as that, within its optimal performance parameters, that's why you hear more detail, less distortion, and it just sounds so much more real and natural. And why people, when they come in the room, they have some of the reactions. I think Mike Sweck, you had some reactions that some guy had tears in his eye again.
What was the common thing we always get is obviously, which I wish Lewis can't join because Father's Day they have reservations. So it'd been nice to have his backup. But yeah, the number one question, hands down, was where are the subwoofers? So it became kind of a joke after a while. But the biggest takeaway I have is the emotional connection. And Sunday I had a gentleman sitting in the sweet spot seat, and I videoed, I sent it to you, Jason, earlier. He was just, I mean, literally tears going down his face, looked at me, shook his head at me, and then he thanked me afterwards and said we made his weekend. Those are the takeaways I like. When you can have that emotional connection,
absolutely,
that meant a lot.
I've never seen that at a show. So I got to look at these videos you sent me because I wasn't in the room all that much. But when I was there, it was super fun. Actually, Tony, who's on the call, Tony with Oriaco, he had a great room too. He does his own recordings. Let's see if he's going to unmute or has a camera. But he came in while I was doing setup one day, and I was playing videos. I was playing YouTube videos in the Popori room, which is another thing I'm going to release a video on, because the Poporis combined with the Bach give you that ability to play YouTube, and it goes through everything, and so much great content that people are missing out on. So that'll be a tip for future videos. But yeah, I wanted to pivot, if we could, to what your takeaways, you guys' takeaways were, and then any questions for the people, from the people that weren't at the show, things that they want to ask based on either my videos or the feedback. And then the third thing I wanted to get out real quick is when I did my wrap-up video, I left off one category that I think was very important from this show that was a highlight I will remember, is that there were 2 budget rooms that I think are important to promote in the hobby. Budget is getting ridiculous for these systems and inaccessible, but that's also part of an exotic hobby. You know, you're going to have Rolex's exotic cars as part of it. But if you went into that HSU room for like less than $500, less than probably a couple grand for the whole system, massive subwoofer, you know, you got to have a lot of room for it. But that system could give 99% of the population immense enjoyment, lots of fun, lots of potential for bargain basement. And I'll even reference, maybe Steve, you remember when we went over to Jim's house,
who
has the $1 million plus acapella Spherons. He had a bookshelf Sue speakers, HSU, and he said sometimes people come over and they like that the best.
He took great delight in setting those up in the pool room system, and it might be running the big horns, or it might be running those, and not everybody could tell the difference. So he got a good laugh out of that. Plus, whenever the main system went down, it was easy to hook those up and get some music going.
No, so that was
so you're absolutely right. They've been doing that. Sioux Research has been doing that for a long time, and they've been very value oriented, making high quality relative budget products.
They and the Lukachevsky speaker, this is like a teenager making speakers. I mean, it's just insane that, and then he's got help from obviously David Chesky, and he's worked with Edgar. So when you put something like the Bach on his speakers, whatever trade-offs he's had to make at that price point, cabinet, drivers and all that, easily gets offset with the Bach. It's a phenomenal sounding system at the listening position, what your measurements can be. So both Sue and Luca, Chesky speaker. I should have mentioned them in my wrap up. I just wanted to get that out the way. Now, people that were there the whole time should pivot to Dave and Michaela. This is a
And
cool,
Mortimer.
they are a cool couple. They are in Bakersfield. I spent some time with them. I'll have videos on that. But wanted to get you guys' impression. It's great to have a couple in the hobby and a dog as well.
Yeah.
But it's good to get you guys' impression because you're more of a dynamic speaker type. You have those TAD reference ones, which are among some of the best speakers, period. And I've got measurements to prove that. And I'll have that in a future video. But yeah, what were you guys' impression of the show and anything that stood out to you guys?
You go.
I actually really like. I know the show is smaller. I know it's a. I like the show. I think it's a. I think you could sit in the rooms quite a bit longer. You're not being pushed anywhere. I almost always can get the center seat. I don't know. I just like that. It's more compared to, like, say, Expona. It's more warm and accepting, where Expona is chaotic and crazy.
You can get to all of the rooms without having to be like rushed in or not getting a seat. I mean, there's a couple rooms that you have to come back, like the Popori room. You had to come back a few times because there was a line, but most of the rooms you can get in and get out and listen to the song that you want to hear, you know, to really get that experience.
And I don't know. I've always been I guess a Bistonic speaker. I really like that. I think it's because I like to feel the impact of it. And so far, of course, I'm really interested in these very big potpourris, these WR1s. No, sorry, the XR1s, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for Mike to get these in, so you can give me a call so we can go down and take a listen to these things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I enjoy that show. I doubt if I'll be going back, but we're going to be moving, and I'd be very surprised. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I didn't get to go to the Dallas show. Did I? I think I popped the potpourris or something in Florida, didn't I?
Oh, well, what you had done, well, there were two things. There is a limiting thing on both the Bach and the potpourris. I learned that if you slide, like you had slid the volume control above 0 dB, you had actually went into potential digital clipping, and the Bach will actually shut off, as well as the potpourri will protect the speaker when it detects digital clipping. And so it's going to be very hard, especially if you have the Bach and the to ever damage a driver, which anybody that's ever had that issue knows what a pain in the ass it is and cost, especially if you have to ship it back and then wait for, and the cost involved, and if it's out of warranty or that driver's not around. So both the Bach and the potpourri has some level of protection to prevent the driver. And so when I looked at the iPad that you had put it to,
that's me finding limits. I always find the limits.
Never.
And it was one of those songs that I think has digital clipping in the actual song, but yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think the max on the slider will for the digital volume on the Bach is 6, and I think it was right at 6.
I don't think it was that.
It wasn't that
When I
quite that
grabbed
much.
the iPad away from you, it was like maxed.
Well, we were also having trouble that weekend with the amps losing power because the outlet was coming out, and that was my first knee-jerk assumption, not knowing that this protection circuitry was even in there, because we had actually had that problem earlier as well. That might have been part of it too, but in any case, yeah, that's something that Edgar told me was in there. I never knew. Any rooms in particular stood out to you guys?
What is it, Enos or something like that?
The one that you could put against the wall.
Yeah,
yeah, those were cool.
I liked him in Florida, and I liked him this time. It just, you know, and he plays movies with them. He's playing the exact same things he did in Florida, so he doesn't allow you to really get in there and play your music to see how it sound on it. So he could be really spoon feeding us what he wants, but what he did play, you know, I thought sounded pretty good. And it's a very interesting looking speaker. I mean, really, you just, you know, I haven't seen one like that. I did like God, it was the last room, one of the last rooms we saw, and it's one that you liked. You had a video of the individual longer haired guy.
Steve Norber,
Yeah.
Soprano Fidelity. Yeah.
Yep. They sounded really good. You're in a near field situation, but those sounded really good. Yeah, those were interesting. Shoot, I don't know.
I don't remember most of the names. The chorus, I think, right? Are
The,
those
with the
those?
with the
With
yeah,
the rel
Mhm.
subs, the
You like
rel
those?
stack. Yeah.
well,
I
yeah,
don't necessarily think that they need the subs, but or-
Yeah, they probably wouldn't need the subs, but it was kind of cool look, and their lighting in that room was very well done.
Mhm.
It was a very impressive looking room, and yeah, if you needed bass, six rels plus the Akoras, which normally fill a room like that just fine.
Yeah,
Um,
that I would have to say the bass was a bit overcooked.
yeah.
well,
but it sounded better than we listened to a rel 6-pack event at Upscale Audio, and they had, I think, 4 rooms done, and the bass was so in your face. He didn't even need speakers at that point. It was just all. And the guy was trying to tell me, like, well, this is the way the recording sounds, like as if he was in the recording itself, though it doesn't sound like that in anybody else's system.
right.
And like, well, I don't want it. Then I don't want it to sound like the recording. Then I mean, it sounded like crap, So yeah, it sounded better. The guy that tuned it better than they did at Upscale Audio. But I think they're just trying to sell speakers.
Well, I mean, when you bring them to the show, part of it is to showcase what's possible. And yeah, they played the Ray Brown trio when I was in there. I'm very familiar with that. And those are acoustic instruments. So you can pretty much tell if the bass is a little heavy, and I would argue that it probably was a little bit. But when you're in these rooms and show conditions, it's smart to bring subs, because if you do have any bass issues, you can use those subs to kind of even it out. And if you ever want to air, you want to air at more bass for people's taste than less. If it's not providing the bass, if it's not giving you dynamic
Right.
slam, then people, ding you much more than if you're a little bit heavy on it. So yeah, and those speakers alone, the Akoras don't need it, but it definitely was, a quality room. So I can see why y'all like that one.
But there's 2 rooms that I think have changed a bit. And one is the YG. 5 years ago, YGs did not sound like they sound today. Like they always seem to be sounding better and better and better. And then and they brought out some big guns to this show, which was nice. And then the Legacy. Legacy can fit in an amazing amount of speaker, like surface area. Like these are huge speakers. They put in small rooms now. And of course, the only way they got away with that is DSP, but they now sound good.
Yeah.
Call it whatever you want, but they sound good now. They couldn't do that before. So Legacy, I think, is all in on the DSP in it, and I think they're reaping the benefits of that.
They were one of the originators to do it, with their wavelet technology.
Yeah.
But the way they put so many drivers in the speaker, they pretty much have to. But I'm still amazed at how, when they carve out so much of the cabinet to put these 20 drivers, how is the cabinet even staying together? That's the real question, is how they're keeping that cabinet together. Because I fabricated my own GR Research in Extremes, and just that front baffle full of like 18 holes or whatever it is, it gets pretty flimsy. So kudos to them for making a cabinet that survives all those drivers. But I agree with you. They have an advantage at these shows with the DSP as well, and to sound good.
Well, if you guys keep winning best of show with the Bach, I think dealers are going to have to put those in just to keep up with Joneses.
Well, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's easy to A/B, because what I do is I play pink noise, which plays every frequency, and then I turn it on and off. And what is the common thing that I always say, Mike? Y'all joke, because I always say, even your grandmother could hear. If your grandmother's still alive, even if she's passed away, I think she could still hear the difference between the pink noise pre and post Bach. And so there's no arguing that it doesn't make a difference. It's audible. But then when you have the spatial cues on top of that, but you're seeing, to the industry's credit, lots of movement towards active speakers. The YG brought their active version of the smaller Vantage phenomenal sounding. All you had was basically the speakers, plug them in, you're ready to go. And so in today's modern, you know, lifestyle, this is what people want, especially younger people, younger couples, that want to have that great sound, but don't want to have a whole cabinet worth of amps and wires and all that stuff. It's not going to be for every audiophile. Hardcore audiophiles like their wires. They like their big chassis. They like their big racks. Totally understand that. And that's why YG does both. But Duncan was telling me he was extremely impressed and happy with what he was getting from the big system. And I would agree there. And that show gave you a chance to get the sweet spot easy, unlike some of the other shows, and spend some time in there. And YG is definitely, if not at the top, one of the top that I would ever consider in the point source box speaker realm. They just do everything at a super high level internally at a meticulous level. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Anything else that y'all wanted to share? How about the nightlife? Was the nightlife good?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
That was fun.
yeah. No, it's always nice to hang out with everybody, and like, you know, I was hoping that we could get Alberto out from AGD, but I was really happy to come talk to him when you guys won you know, sound of the show, because, you know, AGD was a part of that, and you know, you could see the pride on him. So it's always fun to tell people, like, you know, because he's been in it for 5 years or 6 years now, going to every show
Mm-hmm.
to get it, you know, get some kind of accolade. It's really nice. So
No, that's great.
It's always fun to you know, go talk to the people after the show. And so yeah, no, that's, yeah, we did. I know that. What was that place? The fish place that we ate at 3 times.
Oh, Water Grill. That was
Oh,
pretty
Water
good.
Grill.
Yeah. We went there several times. Of course, Mike Sweck and I have after hours good and bad stories.
I did like hearing the stories of night
Yeah.
after
The
dinner.
stories got worse and worse.
That's true.
I was glad I
I'm glad I
wasn't
was in
in
bed,
I
but
wasn't in any of them, and that was the best part.
Yeah.
I'll just live vicariously
that's
through
how
them.
we stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
I'm going back next year just to get my credit card back from the guy who stole it.
But
it
yeah,
was-
the dinners were great, and you know, just to be able to hang out, you know, with you guys, Dave and Michaela. That was so happy I got to meet you guys and hang out those days. Meeting Steve and then Bob and Darla as usual. That just icing on the cake after doing the show all day. And so the dinners with Jason, us going out and having some interesting stories always was fun. But
What are
yeah,
you
I'm
talking
really
about?
glad I get to meet all you guys, because it's
You
great.
didn't have to be at the show. You got to check it out because you didn't have a room. You know, so I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
I was in there a lot more than I thought I was going to be.
You guys took over that guy's room. I mean, that guy just watched. He was more like a participant in his own room, and he ended up winning.
well, that was his
Best of
first
Show.
show. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
his first show. So it was really for him
Yeah,
to
he-
get
he-
a best of show award.
He got very lucky to
That
have you
is
guys
for
involved.
If I was that vendor, I would be so happy with the decision that I made, because the support that he got was, he's got to be going, wow, this just happened. Like, wow.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know?
think if they would be on the call, yeah, they would echo that. They were
Yeah.
big fans of the Potpourri, super, and they deserve props for taking the risk, you know, and
Absolutely.
right. And then on top of that, allowing the Bach in the room was nothing that was an upside to them. Anything that the Bach was selling was not because of they couldn't make any money
Right.
off of that. But now they are interested in becoming a Bach dealer because of that.
Oh, I'm
So this
sure.
is a dealer that doesn't look short term. And I keep on telling Mike this all the time when we look at people at these shows, who's willing to help, who's willing to step up when there's not, you know, lots of people are nice when there's something that they can get out of it. Are they going to be nice when there's an investment on their part, or, you know, do they have forward thinking in this hobby? There's so many that are short sighted and short-term thinking. And so that dealership deserves a lot of credit for being forward thinking, embracing you, Mike, coming in, me bringing the Bach in. And that was really, it wasn't even my idea. That was a customer literally just offering. And then everybody at the same time saying, sure, I'll set it up for you. And I was happy to do that. And it was
Yeah, we got to give a shout out for John. Actually, John was a Potpourri customer. He bought a WR3. he liked them so much, he told Dynamic Sound Systems, you got to hear these speakers and bring them in. He was sitting Friday with me, and he said he had the Bach for Mac. And I'm like, how far do you live from here? And he was gracious to leave the show that night and get it back by Saturday morning. I mean, I think that was just incredible for him to do.
No, that was beyond, and that's indicative of the whole community that we have. That's Bach owners, Popori owners, you know, just the WhatsApp group in general is a very friendly, non-toxic, just people helping each other with no agendas, really. There was no upside for him to take that out of his system. He would have to rerun the bins now that he has to put it back, pack up all that stuff, but he was willing to help out, no charge.
I'm just joining.
Hey, Tony.
Hey,
How are you? You want to put on your
Good.
camera?
Let me see. This is the first time I'm doing Zoom. I don't know.
Oh, you've never done it before?
No.
So Tony had a room, the Oriaco room, and he does some great recordings, which longtime members of the WhatsApp group will remember because I shared some back in the day. And then his room also got an award from Acoustics. He plays mostly CDs. I'll let you figure out your camera thing.
I think my camera is in the main. It's off from the app, so I can talk. If there's any question, I can talk for now and next time.
Okay. Well, yeah. I wanted to get to Edward. What did you think, Edward, of the show?
Well, the show is always good. It's different. It's small. The only drawback is not too many reviewers coming to the show, and I don't know why. That's the only drawback. Not too many of them. So
yeah, well, it's a small show and high cost to go to Costa Mesa. So that's part of the problem. Yeah, let me come back to you in a minute, Tony. I was going to get to Edward, see what he thought of the show.
Sure.
Thank you, by the way, for allowing me to be here. I came into the WhatsApp group under auspicious circumstances almost 2 years ago. And anyway, it was great to see a few of you there. I got to meet up with Steve McCormack again for the second time. We talked a little bit about the Source Point tins that we both enjoy, and he explained a little bit of the Bach to me as well, how he uses it. And then, of course, Jason, appreciated the time that you spent there in the Popori room, or the DSS room, I should say, in explaining that and being considerate to this old man. And also being able to meet Mike Sweck personally. He was very gracious. We had nice conversation and made everyone feel comfortable. And since you all were talking about it, I thought Mike worked harder actually than Lewis in that room. I was in that room multiple times and over the 3 days. And I think not to take anything away from Lewis, but Mike worked very hard. And I was anxious, not just to be able to see the Bach that ended up being there, but after having seen all the videos and all the conversations about the WR3s, I was anxious to listen to them. And when you talk about rooms that made an impression, I was very impressed that it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of glitz necessarily, not a lot of wow and amazing to look at like some of the rooms were, but fairly simplified. But the sound was, Mike mentioned a man getting emotional. That may have been me in disguise back there, because a couple of times listening to the music, it was very, very emotional. But a couple other rooms that I really enjoyed, and you mentioned a couple of them on your recap video, was the audio mirror room.
Yep, I think I was in there when you were. Yeah.
Yes, and I got to meet Vlad earlier that morning. We happened to be at JR's booth together, talking about something cartridge turntable related, and we got in conversation, and he explained to me how he made his tubes the way he did, why he engineered them the way he did, and the sound that he was hoping to achieve with particularly horn speakers. And he said, if you come to the room, hopefully you'll hear what I'm talking about. And I have to honestly say, personally, I don't know half, not even half of what you all know here, technically and engineering wise, but I know what good music sounds like and what good equipment sounds like. And it was self-explanatory when I got to hear his room. The sound was wonderful. Another room that made a major impression was the Albedo Speakers, Supreme Acoustics, hosted with a fellow by the name of Jonathan Castillo from.
You know, he's in the WhatsApp group. He's actually in the group. Yes, he is.
Okay. Unveiled Audio out of Washington. Those speakers, not only did they, I mean, their appearance was just gorgeous. Beautiful. But talk about bass for days. And of course, you mentioned the Acoustico Eterna room with the display that they had. I mean, mind-blowing display. And for me personally, I don't know if any of you really paid any attention, but the 70th anniversary black edition of the Luxman equipment, the cabinet material and coloring is just outstanding for me personally. Anyway, those were a few rooms, a lot of good rooms, a lot of good music there that I enjoyed. And I've learned so much being a part of this chat group. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. I can't argue it at all. And I guess that brought up a question. The Luxman gear is phenomenal. Actually, the distributor came up to me for Luxman. He also, I think, represents Martin speakers and offered to send me Martin speakers at some point. If that's something y'all are interested in me checking out, I definitely think they're beautiful speakers. And certainly when I get my Airbnb, that would be one that I think would be worthwhile. So if y'all are interested in that, that offer was made. But yeah, that's a great report. The audio mirror guy, if you watch my video, he wanted me to turn off when he was going to tell me about the chassis of the amp. And so if you go back and watch the video and look at the chassis of the amp from the top down, and then look at the name of the amp, you may get the inside joke there. But yeah, phenomenal sounding room, phenomenal gear, definitely something to put on my radar going forward and for anybody else. Now, speaking of guys that don't look the part, but actually does know a lot, Bob. Bob looked like a clown as usual. Luckily, he brought Darla to
see my Tom Selleck look I'm working.
Tom Selleck.
I shaved yesterday. That's how much I grew in a day.
It's just better if you just use a total filter, you know? Or we go back to COVID. You just put a mask on, or put Darla at least to balance you out.
I know I'm smart enough to put.
I know. Look at Dave. Learn from Dave Olson.
Right. Darla's in the room.
Even if you have a dog, it'd be better.
So well, here, I'll go over some. Now, Darla took some meticulous notes.
Okay.
So one of the speakers that I wanted her to comment on too is the Audio Neck Evo 2. And there was something, so I want to preface all of my statements here with, I realize there's source components in these rooms and they get overshadowed by the speakers and the big, beautiful amplifiers. I realize there's a lot going on, so I always feel bad when I'm not mentioning that. I'm mentioning speakers or I mention the big, beautiful amplifier, and it's just like, there's a lot going on in these rooms, and I realize that. So that being said, these Evo 2s, they were on the first floor, and it was a modular speaker. And there was something different going on with the mid-range and the tweeter. And what was that? There was something going on with this mid-range and tweeter that
dual pole with no crossover.
Dual pole with no crossover. Can you hear Darla?
Yeah, it's a very innovative driver, and the modular construction allows you to get in on the ground floor and then upgrade by just adding the modules as you go up. So that's a very clever way.
I like this.
in a way that a lot of speaker makers wouldn't go, because they want you to come out with Mark II with very minimal changes, and then you have to rebuy from scratch. Then Mark III comes out a year later, Mark IV, Mark V. Big props to AudioNeck for doing something innovative and also making it upgradable.
So part of the rooms that I liked were for a host of different reasons, not just for how they presented there, but the engineering behind it, kind of where they're going, the possibilities. And that was one of them. The other one, the aesthetics I was just digging it. So I had a bias as soon as I started listening, was the Klang & Co.
Oh, you like that? Okay. You like the retro?
Absolutely.
Like a military style.
Before I was even listening, I was going, I'm going to like these no matter what.
Yeah.
So Klang & Co. And I just thought that was cool. And I looked at them and the design's cool.
Like a horn on top.
I did like the horn on top.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to see where they go with that. The other thing that we really liked, and I wish I could find that horn speaker that you had looked at.
That's okay. I have the photo.
Was it the Odeon?
It was on the first floor, and they had the wood. Can you see that? That one.
That was in the destination audio room. That's the eucalyptus veneer cabinet and horn.
I like that a lot. I liked it.
That wasn't the first floor exactly. That's kind of, it was like that in between.
Yeah.
Floor number 2 or something like that.
That one I thought was good.
Yeah, no, my notes on that one were really good. I put love.
She put love.
I love the look of that.
Because I like a big fat sound. I liked the music they were playing.
Well, you were in the right room then.
Yeah, it was a real fat sound. So
the other one that we had liked, and this was I guess near field listening for sure, and it was towed in more than anything I've ever seen at a show, was the LS1 from this was Grim Audio.
Well, I don't think you went into the Elusio room if you want to see the most toe-in ever. That thing was almost facing each other. I've never seen it.
That's what I thought this one was.
No, I didn't go into the Grim, but I know that they do that.
Yeah.
Very steep.
Like aggressively towed in. So I'm like, well, you obviously got to sit in the middle seat.
Well, the Elusio room not only had it towed in almost facing each other, a few degrees, but it also had a sub driver in the back you couldn't really see, but they were actually angled towards the opposite back corner. So just to get the speaker to do that, they had to use these little coasters. I was asking them because you could tell they kind of hid how they did it, but it had a bass driver facing the opposite back corner, and then the front ones are totally towed in. So I think it's based on an Earl Geddes type dispersion kind of philosophy. Certainly sounds good, and I know that Duke Lejeune is behind that speaker and design and that philosophy, and has always done that with his speakers. So he gets it to work with his designs, but it definitely is atypical when you go in there.
So I liked the Legacy room. So they had their like mid cabinet size, and then the full on the one that had 1, 2, 3, 4 10s in it, or 4 12s in it, with a coaxial in the middle. And I think in your video you said, hey, you got different drivers in there. That room I thought was good. I like the sound. I like big speakers, so I had a built-in bias there. And then it looks like on their mid-size speakers they were using the ribbon tweeters. Yeah, a couple of 10s. I like the design. I like the woodwork, and it sounded good in there. I like that room, period. So, and then the look of the speakers, so another built-in bias. But I thought they sounded good. And I think, Dave, you had mentioned you liked the Legacy room.
I did, yeah.
So I thought that was really good. And then some of the obvious stuff was Ron Resnick's room, the Clarice Audio.
Oh yeah, that was
Clarice, yeah.
Those. And then the Burmeister room.
Burmeister, yeah.
Burmeister and Bayz, yeah.
Bayz, yeah.
The smaller version ones, they have the bigger ones and then the smaller ones there. Those are growing on me. So I like the design. They sounded good there. And then we got to talk to them a little bit about some of the design and what they were doing there.
They still confuse the hell out of me. I don't know what they're doing, but I agree with you. I think the white one sounded the best, which is a small.
So it was omnidirectional with the mid range and the tweeter, but then the low end was, you thought it was a push pull or something like that, but they said
getting a back wave from it, but I don't know how they're getting omnidirectional. I thought it was directional off the highs and mids because I thought they had a directional speaker. Maybe I'm wrong, but he's saying no, you aren't getting any back wave, which I don't understand.
Right.
You literally see the back of the speaker on both sides. So, but I guess it's a radiated type of sub.
Yeah.
Bass. I don't know, but it sounded the best I've ever heard the bass, and I attribute that mostly to the Burmester equipment and maybe the room, but the white ones fit that room better than the big ones.
So they had the big beautiful amplifier in there too. So
it's nice. They are.
It was their second amplifier because I had gone in there several times earlier wanting to talk to Thomas and get a walkthrough, but he just never was ready because he had, like I've been telling people, things happen at these shows. You show up and your amp all of a sudden doesn't work. He had to pivot last minute. And so kudos to him to making lemonade out of lemons that he was dealt with. And that room, definitely I can see where people were impressed with the Bayz. I would just say, I've heard them in his dealership. They're even better there with the
wow,
Burmester.
okay.
But Steve, you've done some research into that speaker as well. Maybe you could speak to the nature of its design a little bit.
It's just a design I found fascinating when I first ran across it several years ago. And I keep hoping to hear them really well set up. Now, this is a case where I did not get into that room at this show because I just missed it as I was talking to other people, and I didn't go room to room. I should have gone into that. I'm kind of kicking myself now because I do think that's a very interesting design, and it's intended to be omnidirectional and full range omnidirectional. Obviously at the lower frequencies, it's effectively omnidirectional anyway, unless you have multiple drivers arranged to give you a cardioid sort of bass, but that they don't. It's a vented enclosure and it is force canceling to some degree. It's it's a symmetrical thing radially and vertically. But they've got a true 360 degree tweeter, and then they've got the different size, dynamic drivers facing one another on either side of that. So the tweeter's like a fixed pole between the two, and then there's piston drivers that are firing into the cabinet, producing the lower frequencies.
Almost like
but
a
the whole thing is
Walsh.
Yeah, well, sort of, kind of. I mean, the ohm had the cone, inverted cone to spread out the sound. These people have an actual driver that's a 360 degree tweeter in any event. But I think the polar pattern for the whole thing is pretty close to Omni.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth listening to.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's definitely worth hearing them in that dealership because it is a very innovative design, and for certain people's family environments where where omnidirectionals make total sense, I would say definitely worthwhile checking out.
And plus, it makes Vegas a worthwhile trip to go to, right?
I didn't know where they were at. I was like, I want to go.
All right, well, let's plan a trip.
Better. Let's do
July
it.
4th in Vegas. Let's do it.
All right.
So I thought the Evolution acoustics, they had their flagship model there, I believe.
6 foot, 7 foot tall, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought those presented well there. That's more on the judging it just by how it sounded room.
So, is that the ceramic driver ones?
It looks like there's some ceramic drivers in there on the mid.
Those were in the Diptyque room last year.
Yes.
I
think that corner was Evolution.
I know you were mentioning that, but
the Diptyque, I think, was the Linkwitz room.
And then
you were saying that. I thought, but God, I thought that's where those were, but it doesn't matter. Yep.
Dar- Dar- Darla also liked, you apparently visited their factory, those panel speakers next to where that car audio was that you listened to on the
Diptyque, I haven't visited their facility yet. I will be at some point, but yeah.
you like those a lot.
Yeah, I did.
That was the
Those-
best I've heard, the Diptyques.
Yeah.
And especially he wasn't afraid to play dynamic material loud. It was a very good track. Anything and everything, an EDM track, which I don't know if it was captured in any of the videos that Mike Sweck did, but I made that as a point in the Popori room. These panels with EDM music, you can often tell the value of a line source for certain people's taste, including mine, how EDM music images more floor to ceiling. In a point source box speaker where the bass driver is near the floor and is doing locatable frequencies, oftentimes that bass energy is lower to the ground. But when you hear these EDM songs on a line source, dynamic, and as well as that was really a great demo of the diptyques and line sources in general. You felt like the entire, wall of sound, floor to ceiling, was being used, and the imaging that isn't corrupted by miking and all that, that you don't have that with EDM music. You could really tell the value of line sources in certain areas. And so that was a great track. I'm going to start using going forward.
Unveiled Audio, and that's a member of your channel. That was his first show there. And
You're talking about the Albedo?
And I think what speakers were those? They look like the Von Schweigers, but
Yeah,
they
the Albedo. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just said it.
I thought it sounded great in there.
Mhm.
And I never did find out the price range, all of that stuff, but I thought those presented well in there. And then I was happy for him. That was his first show. The room was set up well, so I thought that was great. So
Well, one thing I told
think Von Schweikert's going to send a cease and desist letter to them. You can't tell the difference. That was just even the color.
It was close.
Even the
I
color.
was wondering, were those speakers also ceramic drivers?
Probably.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think you got to look at my video closely, though. They are doing some innovative things with those Albedos that are different. The other thing that he did, he knew what one of my favorite reference songs was. He did the "And So It Goes" by Jennifer Warnes. And
Good.
that's a great litmus test, because no matter how many times I hear it, if I don't get goosebumps in it, because I know a piano really good and I know her voice, such that, and just that song just does it for me, that either it does it, the system can do it, or it can't. And at first I was a little bit worried listening to it because the noise floor was so high with the air condition, and that was kind of ruining it for me. But I still was able to get that, despite the noise floor issues, I was still able to get that pass or fail. It still passed, and that's a testament to that it was a good sounding system, even with the high noise floor. I was supposed to go back, because once I told him that, he said, come back, he'll turn off the air conditioning and we could record it, but I just didn't get a chance. But yeah, that's I think that speaker is a little more different and innovative than at least than the Von Schweikert. You got to go watch my video though to see the exact reasons why. But
Bob told me his favorite room was the Aeon room.
The what?
we're not going to talk about Aeon.
That's what came out of that saying, man, that's the best room I ever heard.
Didn't make it to that room. A little bit of previews while we have you guys on. I'm going to have a video at Dave Olson's place, doing his system with the Bach. Phenomenal. There was a little bit of preview at the beginning of this Zoom where we talked about that. That's going to be a great video. Steve in the other corner here, his amp, he brought his amp, and the stereo one that I previewed, the video I did just before the show, is modified. I don't think you've even come up with a model name yet for it, but it's his version of the Chinese version of the A1, Musical Fidelity A1. And again, to Dynamic Sound Systems credit, before hours or after whatever he did, he
Oh,
was
Saturday
allowed-
morning.
Saturday morning, he
Yeah.
allowed that to get put in, and then Mike Sweck was able to hear it on the Popori WR3s, and that was wowing people. I think he's working hard on the monoblock version because that's what I think most people will want and most systems will demand, because you still have to be a little bit careful at 25 watts, depending on the efficiency. The monoblocks, I've tasked them with get on that, and I'm going to be giving some help there. We're going to try to find a way to make that work, but that's going to be coming soon. I know a lot of people were interested in that video.
We will find a way, but you're selling 25 watts, a good 25 watt amp. You're selling it short, man. Do a
Well,
lot.
I used it with the WR2s.
Yeah.
And certainly if you have a system where you're alleviating the bass to subs, you're
Oh,
using an
especially
active
then,
crossover,
yes.
you don't need any more than that stereo for sure.
Right.
But even the WR2s natively, the Poporis that are over 90 dB efficient, I just think when you get under 90 dB efficient, then you may start wanting to look at the monoblocks that he's going to be tasked with.
Fair enough.
But just to be on the safe side, you never can have too much headroom. But yeah, you'll have both options, and so stay tuned for that. Might as well open it up for any questions. Mike, Lang, Scott, you guys got any questions while y'all are on?
Well, wait, I didn't get to tell you my favorite room at the show.
Oh, that's right. We got to get to you.
Well, my goals at these shows are somewhat different than yours, and I'm not even trying to get around to all the rooms, but I can say quite honestly that my favorite room at the show was hands down the Popori room, no question about it. And the reasons why are that I fundamentally like those speakers and like their presentation. Got to hear them with my amp briefly, that was nice. And then the Bach got put in, which really was, I'm going to maybe say transformative, but it was a big upgrade in the sound of that system. And my point there is that system was hitting all of the marks for the things that are important to me with a relatively modest system, relatively low cost. There were other rooms that I was in there that sounded quite good, but at many times the cost of the equipment.
Exactly.
Room.
Oh, that thing costs as much as some for like a couple cables in another room.
Yeah. And I none of you guys have mentioned being in Sonny's AV room, and I think he had two rooms with the one I was in that had the rock ports playing with the CH Precision. Sounded excellent. The CH guy was doing a demo, and he had brought some really good recordings. We got to hear some archival stuff that was just fantastic. Yeah, that was outstanding. I really enjoyed it.
Speaking of that room, I kind of downplayed it this year. I agree with you. CH Precision has really elevated in my impressions over now that I learn more and more. And also, I think it's important for people to know the history, the legacy behind it, the anagram history. And one reason I kind of didn't spend too much time is that I have a video from, as you remember, you've been to the dealer in Chicago that we went to after hours last year, but he also did it this year, where I'm going to have a lot more.
Ricardo Reyes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have a lot more featuring CH Precision. So I kind of didn't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I'm gonna have a lot more on CH Precision. And yeah, Sonny's room with the rock ports sounded really
rock
good.
ports. And then the Acustica Turner room was a lot of fun. I didn't hear anything in that room that was impressive, but the equipment and the display of the equipment was amazing. The volume, the $60,000 volume control, I had fun checking that out.
If it was anywhere near a reasonable price, I would have bought it because it just was too cool.
And what would that have been? How far down do we have?
I don't want to admit what I would do.
Here we go.
Because he'll probably call me and tell me I'll give it to you.
Yeah. Done. Deal done.
But I got to protect myself from my own idiocy sometimes, buying just on coolness factor. But yeah,
I got to call out Steve Norber and Prana Fidelity, along with EAR, Dan Meinwald. They were showing with Silversmith Audio Cables. Jeff Smith was there, and Scott Markwell was there. He's the Furatech and Kuzma distributor. So I think he helped with the turntable and tone arm setup there.
so before you go on from that room, EAR, I don't know if it was captured on the video or if I was talking to him before or after, but EAR, Tim DeParavicini, was working on his own integrated version of the A1, which, as people will recall, was a budget, design based on his design, a budget implementation of it. He was working before his death on his ultimate A1 expression with the parts and a great volume control, probably phono stage, which he's also known very well for. So I don't know if it was in that video or after I left or after I turned off the camera. He said that still is due to come out, the EAR version of the A1 integrated, but not a monoblock or a stereo version like you're doing. So that's just an FYI.
Yeah. Also, just again to mention Steve Norber, he always has a great sounding room. He always puts together excellent equipment that is at a relative bargain price, and he never gets the attention I think that he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know how he makes money with the
I don't know,
Baltic
man,
birch.
but I always hope that he's making it. We need more people like him in the industry.
No, great guy. No, excellent report from you. Yeah, any questions?
I want to throw out one other thing, especially because I think Darla mentioned the sound in the destination audio room with those big horn speakers and the Flea Watt, but beautifully made tube amplifiers. I've forgotten the name of the designer, the German guy that did all that was there, and I chatted with him.
Were those, France?
Okay.
The destination audio?
Let me
that was the Lucas Ficus. That was the Lampezator guy.
They got those horns you like, Darla.
Yeah.
I think that was his new line, I want to say.
That was not my impression.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking. I thought it said Destination Audio new line by Lucas, the guy that does the Lampezator, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah.
He was saying his notes on it though.
Anyway, yeah, I'll have to.
Anyway, I find this fascinating, and this has been true for like all of my time in audio. That the sound in that room is not to my taste, but I appreciate why it's so popular and welcoming. It's like, to me, it's like slipping into a hot tub of music. It's like just,
I'm glad you said that like that, because I go into a lot of rooms and do the same thing. Okay, that's not my taste, but this is a great speaker, and I can understand how someone would like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, and that one really qualified in that regard. I just find that very interesting that it can be so far different from my personal goals, and yet I really appreciate how good it is at what it does.
Right.
I think we should mention the who didn't show up. You got Joseph Audio didn't show up. You got MBL that didn't show up. Gershom didn't show up. I mean, these are all people that were there, I think, last year. Tad, of course, didn't show up. I mean, a lot of people didn't show up to this show.
Well, Tad was there last year with the distributor, but I don't think Jeremy's ever gone to that show. Now, a dealer may have brought MBL before. Gershman, I don't think has gone to that one before. But it is a smaller show, and it was on the decline last year. I was even remarking to Steve that I didn't, and the vendors that were in the vendor area for actual, doohickey.
Oh yeah, there's
right.
They were not too happy last year. I think I heard much better results this year, and then they hired some new people on staff with the show. They changed the name, so I saw improvement there, such that It's certainly not the biggest show by far, and probably won't be even next year, but at least I saw, instead of the decline, I think I saw some.
Yeah, happy. I'm glad to hear that, because it'd be nice to have a local Southern California show that
Absolutely.
that
Not
would
like
do
it
good.
doesn't.
Well,
money
Mike
to-
Sweck says it's because of the potpourri. He says we had a line the entire day, even on
Yeah.
Sunday.
Hey,
Can you guys hear me?
no argument.
Just
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, were you any of you guys were in my room, like Audiophile speakers?
I was, but I don't know if anybody else was.
I'm asking the Zoom people.
Yeah.
I,
Do y'all remember being in the Tonian Labs Audiophile speaker room?
I don't remember.
What does it look like?
Oh boy, I'd have to.
It's a small bookshelf speaker, but it has a little tweeter on the top corner that radiates upward. And then he uses, Tony always has, it's a Denon with the biggest volume control, the coolest volume control in the hobby. One of the coolest until the acoustic Eterna is this huge volume control on the Denon he has. And then he's got a CD player and he's got CDs everywhere, a lot of which he masters his own material and he sells his own CDs. And so it's a very, it's a tough room sometimes to get the sweet spot, even in a slow show, because he sets it up on the long wall. And so there's one row and then there's very few sweet spots. But, and in fact, when I went in your room, Tony, I didn't even get in your sweet spot, if you recall, and I didn't get a chance to come back.
I do.
But I understand you did well. Edward, you were in there?
That room.
You had a good time in that room?
I remember that room, and I remember there was about 8 people in there when I tried to get in, so I wasn't able to really spend much time, but I remember that room.
Yeah, so Tony, that's the one drawback of setting up just one row, is it limits you to really.
it's two row, but I understand.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. You had people behind me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very tough, I didn't even get the sweet
but
spot.
my speakers doesn't require to sit in front of it, as your video probably shows that. You're right in the angle and you can hear the sound. It doesn't matter where you sit. Overall, you lose the image, definitely, but it's like live music. You go to a bar and you don't sit in front of them, you still enjoy the acoustic of it. And that's why I was asking if any of the guys were there to experience that.
Yeah, so the top firing tweeter, how much range does that carry?
It's almost 15 dB down than the front tweeter, and both tweeters basically they work above high frequency. It's just for ambient, and mostly the sound's coming from one. It's a single source point kind of full range driver, and the tweeters, both the front and the top, just help them to get the harmonics.
Okay, so they're both in phase, just one's 15 dB down, firing up.
Yes, on the top one, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think people could appreciate it. And like you said, you got an award for that room. I think your recordings are what people also enjoy because you have very good quality recordings.
Yeah, I don't think not too many people have as much as microphone that I have. And I spend time trying to record and play it back and understand, because there's basically 2 transducer in the signal chain, and either is the microphone or is the speakers. And most of the people like came out and they say the source is the important part, which is I disagree 100%, because if we have 2 transducers and most of the microphones are 1 inch, and the minimum driver we use as a end of the chain is another transducer, which is 6 inch, 5 inch. So the distortion of the 5 inch, 6 inch, 7 inch, 8 inch is far greater than 1 inch. So in that case, the end is the most important part in a recording chain, and then is the microphone. And then the amplifier or streamer, whatever, it's all 0.00. They have their own place, they make a difference, but it's not as much as if you have a correct speaker and correct recording. So that's the main idea.
Well, what I'll try to do in the future is use one of your recordings and play it on my Popori hypersales in my room. I just released a recording today that I couldn't even find the name of the recording. people are crowdsourcing and helping me.
Sounded
find
like
it.
sounded like Kodo drums to me.
It did sound like it. I think there's no confirmation for sure. I've played some of the Kodo drum stuff. There's just a little bit of difference, but that a flavor, but it could definitely be that.
Well, there's several different Kodo drum albums. Even I think Reference Recordings did something with them. Anyway, that's what it sounded like. I didn't recognize the specific track.
Yeah, and the Usher test CDs have been phenomenal, but that was just one that I used for very punishing to the system, but also very punishing to your room if you've got anything rattling or anything that'll resonate. It's a really cool track for that. And it'll tell you if your subs are integrated well. But in any case, yeah, I'll do that, Tony, and congrats on getting an award for your room.
Thanks.
And let's see, Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. Seeing that Popori won the award for best room, my question is, how much of the time, how many of the people witnessed the Popori with or without Bach? Since it wasn't a Bach room, did you just leave the Bach on all the time, or was it mostly stereo?
So all Friday, there was no Bach involved because that was before this gentleman had brought the Bach to even be put in. So Friday was 100% no Bach potpourris with the AGD and the hi-fi rows. And then when the Bach came in, it did not replace any of the gear, although it could replace the streamer and the preamp. It just fit in, and we still used the AGD preamp, still used the hi-fi rows as a streamer. It was showing the versatility of the Bach. If you wanted to replace it, you can. If you're married to your DAC, your preamp, whatever, it's just an add-on piece. And so on Saturday, I calibrated it. I think we used Steve McCormack's. he was the bin that we
was
used
the dummy
for most of the day. I did 2 other calibrations later. One was the gentleman with acoustics, who then, after hearing that, gave it an award, the whole room the award. And then I think there was another gentleman, it might have been Dave, it might have been your friend, or somebody got calibrated on top of that. And then that was 3 people that got calibrated, or was it even a female? I don't even remember. Anyway, Mike, I don't know how much time people did A-Bing, but you could turn it on and off, because if you don't have a Bach, one of the things that Edgar wants you to do is make it easy to A/B test on the fly. So there's just a 1-button push, and it just takes everything out that you did and puts it back to no Bach and then with the Bach. Or if you want to just hear the spatial cues, the crosstalk cancellation, no ORC, frequency response, you can do that. Or if you just want the frequency response, no spatial cues, you can do that. It's very much, he wants you to hear the difference and be able to prove it. And we did a lot of demos with pink noise to make it very clear. But yeah, that was, I can't answer for all the day, but then Saturday and Sunday, the Bach was available.
Yeah, we had pretty good, we had just as good feedback on Friday without it. And then Saturday, actually, it was off for the acoustics guy. He was in the room for well over an hour, and that's when I came out and called you, because then we started talking about it, and I want him to take the calibration, but he was listening for that hour pretty much without. So we were going on and off with it. When a lot of people came in and asked if it was in there, we would show the difference and stuff like that. But we had really positive feedback on Friday as well.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, my experience is that, I've been a Bach guy for about, I'm pushing 5 years probably. And the only way I can listen to stereo is if I start with stereo, turn it on, put it in stereo. I got a nice system. It sounds great. But if I start doing the A/B, I can't listen to my stereo. It's not even in the same category. So, I always tell people there's hi-fi and there's Bach, and great hi-fi is great hi-fi. But crosstalk cancellation, and especially the equalization, it's tremendous. And so, I can't imagine why more people aren't just bringing Bach and hiding it behind the screen.
Well, people would know if they did, because it literally makes the walls disappear and the speakers disappear. Now, there are about 1% of people that for whatever reason, they like crosstalk. They like the sound stuck to the speakers in between. And so be it. You don't have to buy it, or you can just A/B turn it on or off. That's fine. But man, I was showing you guys in the WhatsApp group the measurements I'm getting with the hypersales in the critical range of music, 15 to 25 dB of crosstalk cancellation. The speakers just literally disappear and the walls disappear. It's just so eerie how that could be what freaks people out, because the music just appears in front of you, and it could be right here, could be here, could be here, depends on what's in the recorded material, but it can just be freaky. And yeah, once you get used to that, just like if we had always had that, and then somebody gave you a system with crosstalk after all these, you would say, get rid of that crap. But we get brainwashed to what we have heard.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
Sometimes the delta is too great for some people to understand, but that's why Edgar even puts a slider, or you could turn it on or off. But yeah, it was very good on Friday. However, Michael can attest to this. I listened to it, and what did I say about the mid-range, Mike?
A little high.
I said it was high, right?
Yep.
What did the measurement show once we took them on Saturday with the Bach? It showed exactly that.
Yep.
And this is a case of no speaker is perfect. Panels are not perfect. Scott's one of the best panel speakers out there, the hybrid, like I mentioned, the Sanders. And they deserve a lot of credit, Sanders, because they did it. They give it to you with EQ, because they know in room, forget about the clipple, forget about the 1 foot away measurements. You can get some value from that. What really matters, what is it going to sound to you in your ears at your listening position? And they know that one driver doing most everything, certainly electrostatic's going to be more linear than a tweeter doing everything, or a mid-range or a woofer, but still it can't do everything totally linear at the listening position in every room. You need to have EQ, especially if you're an open baffle. It's going to have sometimes hotter energy in the mid-range where most of the music is. It could sound a little bit different. So having that EQ, which Sanders deserves a lot of credit for, with electrostatics and open baffles in general, is a huge, huge benefit. And anybody that's seeing Scott's measurements in his room, you should go to Vegas. Next time I'm going to Vegas, I'm gonna check it out, because they're incredible. That's high fidelity at its peak. And I know what that's going to sound like. It's going to sound incredible. That is the epitome of what you want if you value anything that's high fidelity. And then the Sanders are very dynamic as well with the bass driver, the pistonic bass driver. So it's a great speaker, but it brings up the macro point of not every speaker in a room is going to be perfect. And the Poporis, as good as they were Friday, they were a little hot in the mid-range. And I told you that. Sure enough, that's what the measurement showed. We were able to get rid of that. And then everything's, like Steve said, maybe transformative is too big of a word, but when you take out the crosstalk and
it was a real serious big change.
Big change. And anybody that heard the pink noise before and after, there's just huge tonal balance difference.
I want to throw a little bone out there to Roger Sanders too, because back when I was a young audiophile, I built a pair of his electrostatics that he had in Audio Amateur magazine, like circa 1975-ish. And I communicated with him at that time, but he very, very directly said in that article, these speakers are great, but you have to have an equalizer. And of course, these were like the 10-band, graphic equalizers. But he said, you got to have it. He said, your system will always sound better than the guy who eschews equalization because he's a purist, because your system will just sound better. And he said, my speaker needs it. So he's been there for 50 years. And now of course he's a digital equalizer. It's a tremendous tool, and all that DSP is like not even in the same category as the old what was the name of that sound? What was the name of one of the better parametric equalizer companies back in the day? But anyway,
Sound Craftsman or Crown had a relatively good one.
Yeah, it must have been Sound Craftsman. Anyway,
yeah.
And I
Well,
had,
I mean,
I had
car
one of
audio
those.
people who put a lot of effort into their systems, as we saw, that was another shout out to that show. It does have car audio. You wouldn't even think of being able to integrate a driver that was like 10 inches away from my head with a mid-range over here and one on the door. And the vocals were perfectly integrated in that car. That's why I told people, go listen to that car system. Without DSP, that would have never been integrated properly. That imaging would have never been possible. And the coherency, unbelievable. So why people still are anti-DSP in a modern world just is beyond me. You know, the lengths that you have to go through. I mean, Ari Sarat is one that can go through these ridiculous lengths with their crossover, having all this huge box, you know, to do it in the analog domain.
And the
But
IO design is another good example.
yeah, all these parts, you know, you'd have to go to such extremes to even get close and still not have the precision. You know, all of these things are EQ. Now, one's in digital, one's in an analog, but you're EQing a driver to perform the sound to perform where it is designed most. Even a volume control is a form of EQ due to the equal loudness contour. If you're playing low, you're going to hear it differently than if you hear it high. So as soon as you change the volume, it's changing the tonal balance that gets to your ear. People are so anti-EQ out of no reason whatsoever, other than they've just been brainwashed. And then the best way to do it is in the digital domain, and you can easily hear the A/B difference. There's very few people nobody of reputable has ever, you know, heard the Bach and not been able to hear the difference. 100% of everybody reputable. Go ahead.
Actually, there's an issue.
I'm going to have to take off here. I got a little
Okay, good seeing you, Mike.
dinner, so I'll see you
Yeah.
all. Take
All
care.
right. Okay,
All
good
right,
seeing
good
you.
night.
Take care.
So long.
Jason, you raise an issue that I would love to address to Edgar, which is the one thing the Bach doesn't do is address Fletcher Munson.
Okay.
And I think that would be a really interesting addition somewhere down the line to the DSP.
Yeah, I have brought that up to him. He acknowledges that being part of the equation that you could do. I think also the other where this could evolve to is, as you may have heard, Massimo, which, well, I guess is changing, but they did a lot of medical equipment, actually being able to calibrate, as I heard with the Denon earbuds that I had, that would actually find what your eardrum is sensitive to, and that actually both of your ears are not symmetrical in how they hear after age. And it can also measure what kind of hearing loss you've had over the years and then compensate for that as well. So I think the evolution is going to, and he is working on medical device stuff, not to tip anything that I can't tip off, but yeah, big manufacturers have been wanting him to leverage his technology and knowledge. But yeah, the evolution of this is factoring in even more things. Now that he has head tracking, now that he has in-ear mics, now that he also has the ability with partnering with, you know, certain companies in the future, potentially like Massimo, you can get Fletcher Munson, and then you can even get your personal ear damage over the years.
That's
and that
cool.
would be super cool. When all of those things are taken into an account, you have something that's even better than HRTF, head related transfer function. You have just, you know, more than a fingerprint, you know, so, and something that can change with you as your hearing may improve or, you know, diminish over the years. So yeah, that's a great point. And I'll bring it up to him again. Last thing though, Edgar needs is another project.
Is it even possible with what he's doing at some point, if there's, say, 3 people in the front row, kind of like there was some of that technology going in this?
Yes, but you need to have it's wave field synthesis. So you
Yeah.
need
Okay.
the
Gotta have a
array
sound
type
bar.
speakers. You cannot have stereo speakers and do that. But
Okay.
in his lab, you can go to his lab with these, it's called wave field synthesis. It's more like a sound bar with many drivers, like they have at the Sphere, like 17,000 drivers, small drivers, but they beam the sound and they can cancel what this person's hearing and target only what the frequencies this person versus this person and this person.
Yeah.
And you think it's something very complex and Star Trek-y. It really isn't. All it is leveraging DSP to provide comb filtering. You know, we already have comb filtering with drivers that are nearby. They already cancel each other out. Well, you're just using it to your advantage. You're saying, okay, I'm going to use it to cancel out what this person hears and only give them the song that they want to hear. Then this person can get the song they want to hear. I'm talking about 3 different sweet spots, 3 different songs that can be played to 3 different people,
Yeah.
or in a car, passenger and driver can have 2 different songs, but it requires these array speakers, not stereo speakers. Can't do it with
Okay.
stereo speakers.
Yeah, I got to be getting out of here, guys. So have a good
Okay.
Father's Day, everybody. And
Yep. Good seeing you, Dave. Good seeing you this weekend. I think, yeah, we're at an hour and a half, so we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks again, Mike, for the room and all the fun times at night. Good seeing you, Steve. Ed,
Thank you.
thanks for joining, Scott. And even you, Bob, I guess.
Even Bob. Well, we're sorry that Darla didn't really make an appearance, but
Yes,
I had her in the room. I was trying to coach her in there. I don't want to.
Dave,
Was
got
that
a-
her on- is that her on the wall behind you?
I'm drawing her in.
I'm going to get a donut for Father's Day, a nice donut, and then Dave can get back to drinking his Fanta. All right. All right. Good night, guys. See you
All right,
soon.
guys.
See ya.
Go.
Take care, everybody.